Symptoms in midlife can be pretty wild. And I know that one of the hardest things to discern in your own life can be figuring out what's normal and what's not. And the biggest reason for that is because women have been gaslit for a really long time. We have not necessarily been seen, heard, or valued for our experiences related to our health. I have this conversation all the time with women who have gone to practitioners, who have talked to their doctors, and who have felt like what they were explaining related to symptoms wasn't real in some way. And I'm here to tell you, whatever your experience has been is 100% valid. And so we're going to talk a little bit today about what are the symptoms that you've maybe experienced? What are things that you should be paying attention to if you feel them as you get into your mid 30s, late 30s, 40s, 50s, etc.? What do you need to be looking at? And how do you need to be making sure that you're finding support from a practitioner, from a coach, from somebody who will listen to your experience and help guide you towards what are the best next steps? How do you unpack the symptoms? How do you make sure that from a lifestyle standpoint, you're doing everything you can to really help yourself feel your best from the inside out? And so I want to talk about that because symptoms are signals. They should not be ignored. And that's something that sometimes we do in our lives because we're busy. We've got a lot going on. We're managing all the things. And as our health evolves over time, we just assume that that's how our body is supposed to feel. But I'm here to tell you there's a lot of symptoms that women experience. They may be common, but they are not normal. And there is a big difference between being normal and feeling normal and being optimized and feeling optimal. There's a huge difference. And I don't know about you, but when it comes to my longevity health and being around for my family and showing up the way I want to in my life and serving the way I've been called to and doing the best I can as a mom, a wife, a friend, and all the things, I want to feel optimal. I want to feel energized. I want to feel good in my skin. I want to feel like I can jump up out of bed and be excited about the day. You know, getting older and having your health evolve and aging is a massive privilege. And it's something that we have to learn how to nurture with intention by understanding what are the symptoms that we don't need to necessarily manage and how do we work through them and how do we make sure that we're getting supported with things that we might be going through. So let's talk about symptoms. Symptoms that I want to make sure you do not ignore. And I've talked about this a little bit in my own journey, my own story, but I want to talk about what are common symptoms that women experience in midlife especially. Energy crashes are a big one, right? We just assume we're getting older, our body can't keep up the same, and so we experience energy crashes, most often in the afternoon. But please understand that energy crashes, especially day after day, are not normal. You should not be going through a massive energy crash day after day. Weight loss resistance, added belly fat, redistribution of fat mass, all of that is a sign of health evolving, but it's also a sign of you have to change your effort. You have to change your habits and your regimen. You have to change your focus. And so, yes, while this is typical for a lot of women, and we get to this point in our health journey where what we were once doing doesn't work anymore and we don't feel as good, that is a common narrative and a common thing that happens, but it's not something that we have to deal with. It's not the norm that we have to continue to just accept, right? While it can be tied to hormonal fluctuations, it's also tied to things like sleep and stress and overall inflammation in the body, all lifestyle things we can focus on with the right kinds of tools, strategies, and regimens. So again, common, but not normal. Brain fog and memory lapses is a big symptom. I've experienced this here and there. I know some women experience this in a very intense way, but it can be really tricky to try to make sense of how do I find the words? How do I remember what happened? How do I recall stories, etc. When you get into that place of brain fog, it's extremely frustrating. And this, again, can be tied to hormonal fluctuations and things like nutrient deficiencies, perimenopausal changes, and so much more. So there are so many things you can continue to do with supporting your body on a physiological level, but it takes time to really figure out what does your body need and then go from there with coming up with a plan. You know, things like mood swings, anxiety, rage, all of that was a big one inside of my story. I talk a lot about how the mental health side of symptoms was what I experienced first. This is a huge thing related to physiology changes. And when our hormones start to fluctuate, we start to experience more stress. We start to experience potentially more rage, more anxiety, just feeling more overwhelmed. And so having strategic lifestyle practices in place, but also potentially exploring supports like hormone replacement therapy and other kinds of nutrient deficiencies and imbalances that you can essentially work to balance and optimize. All of that can make a massive difference. But all of these symptoms so far are not things we should ignore. Sleep struggles and digestive changes, these are big ones too. Often they can be tied to stress. They can also be tied to hormonal change and fluctuation. They can also be tied to what's happening in the gut. Our gut microbiome starts to shift and change over time as we age too. So things we maybe weren't sensitive to, we are sensitive to now. And a lot of these things can be more targeted as far as effort goes when you get into more targeted and specific testing and you start to figure out what's happening with your unique body. What are your unique balances and imbalances and deficiencies, and how can you get more targeted with your effort? Things like hair, skin, and nail changes are big ones. Some women lose their hair. Some women have really brittle nails. Some women start to get really dry skin. Dry skin has been a big one for me. I've also had a really dry scalp, right? Dry scalp, dry skin. I've sort of lost my hair, but that hasn't been exactly my story. But the thing that I want you to understand is all of these things are indicators of your health is evolving. Your hormones are fluctuating, your physiology is changing. And so what do we do to get more targeted with our effort to make sure that you're really taking care of yourself the way you need to for your longevity health? The other big thing inside of not only symptoms that we don't want to ignore are the narratives that we need to let go of, are the narratives that we need to unlearn. And as a coach, this is one of the biggest things I work through my clients with. How do we let go of the narratives that we have associated with being health for a really long time? Women have been conditioned in so many ways for decades around what's healthy, what's not. What do you include in your regimen? What do you not include? What kinds of things should you eat and what should you not eat? What should your movement look like? What should your sleep look like? What are the supplements you should use, right? The list goes on and on and on of all the shoulds that we should be focusing on. But a lot of that honestly comes from the old school narratives, the things that we need to let go of, the things that we need to unlearn. So I'm going to talk about some of the common ones that I hear, but also the ones that I've had to work through in my own life that I've told myself for a really long time that actually at the end of the day don't serve any of us at all. We'll get back to our conversation shortly after this message. If you are an overwhelmed and completely confused mom who just wants a simplified, easy to follow, and understandable plan when it comes to their health and wellness journey, then you're in the right place. As a wellness coach, I focus most on empowering women to follow a highly personalized and bio-individual plan that actually gets you results and that feels sustainable for your longevity. I'd love to invite you to set up a free coaching call to talk about your health and wellness journey. Head to erinshreer.com/coaching to set up your call today. Again, that URL is erinshreer.com/coaching to set up your call. And to make it even easier, head to the show notes of this podcast and click free coaching session to set up your call ASAP. Now let's dive back into the conversation. One of the things and narratives that we have to let go of is the concept of all of these symptoms and everything that we're going through. It's just part of getting older. It's just something we have to accept. But I'm here to tell you, you do not have to feel terrible as you get older. There is so much we can do from a proactive and preventative lifestyle standpoint that can help you feel amazing and energized and joyful and excited and ready to tackle the day. Does it take a little bit of a different strategy? Yes. Does it take doing things you haven't done before? Yes. Does it take getting out of your comfort zone? Yes, again. And does it take letting go of narratives that you've probably told yourself for a long time about what healthy really looks like and means? Also, yes. There is a lot we have to let go of narrative-wise, and I see it often in the women's health space, and it's something that I've had to go through in my own life as well. The other thing women often hear is, if you just eat less and move more, then you're going to fix everything. It'll be fine. And that could be further from the truth. As we get older, we have to fuel with more intention than ever before, and we have to train with more intention than ever before. Women for decades have been under-fueling and overtraining, stressed to the max, and their bodies get stuck. And that's exactly what happens to majority of women in midlife health. We get completely stuck. And so it takes this process of slowing down to speed up, but not in the capacity of eating less and moving more, but rather in the capacity of being way more intentional with your effort and figuring out how do you fuel for energy and strength, And also, how do you train but also rest for energy and strength? Another big narrative that we've all heard at some point in time is how it's selfish to focus on our health. That we're somehow taking away from our family, that we're taking away from our work, that we're taking away from the deadlines that we're supposed to be managing, that we're not focusing enough on what we're supposed to do. And I'm here to tell you that if you burn the candle at both ends and you continue to stay in the headspace of feeling like taking care of yourself, going to the doctor, doing targeted testing, investing in your wellness, purchasing targeted supplementation, if you stay in the headspace of feeling like all of that is somehow selfish or that somehow you don't deserve it, then you will continue to stay stuck. And you will continue to latch onto that old narrative that somehow prioritizing your own needs is selfish. And that is an old school narrative that needs to be released and let go of. And I have to talk through clients about this and with this concept all the time because I wholeheartedly understand how scary and overwhelming it can feel to invest proactively in your health. But here's the thing I want you to understand, and this is one of the most important things that I have learned along the way and I want to share with you. If you don't proactively choose to prioritize your health in some way, then at some point in time, you will reactively be required to do something in the future. Whether that's through a diagnosis, whether that's through an injury, whether that's through some sort of malnourishment or something like that. At some point in time, if we aren't proactive and getting out of our own way and understanding that proactive healthcare choices are the true key to our longevity, then at some point we're going to be required to make a choice because our body or our brain are going to need something. It's so important to stay in this proactive headspace. And remember that taking care of yourself is not selfish. Proactively investing in what you need for your longevity is not selfish. And the truth of the matter is, all of us at some point in our life will come across someone that we love that likely gets some level of a diagnosis. And guess what happens when there's a diagnosis involved? It's all hands on deck. It's all investment on deck. It's all the practitioners and doctors on deck. It's all the testing on deck. But why do we wait for that? Why do we wait? Being proactive is the way to true longevity health and a life where you are actually dictating what your day-to-day can look like, which is why I'm so passionate about continuing to share this because I see this all the time with women. They take pause and they get super overwhelmed with this idea of proactively investing in what they need. And most of it comes down to feeling incredibly selfish or guilty, or they have shame. They have layers of narratives that they've been telling themselves for so long. And I'm here to tell you, it's time to let them go. Another myth that a lot of women have to wrestle with and work through is this idea that we're supposed to have it all figured out all the time. And we're not. I want you to know that accepting help is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself. Women don't have to have it all figured out. Women don't have to manage it all on our own. We don't have to do all the things. I want you to remember and really understand that investing in support and finding a way to make sure that you have what you need through resources and practitioners and coaches and a team to help guide you towards your path and your plan, that is the key. That is the key to really getting to a place of where you want to when it comes to your longevity health goals. So we talked about symptoms. What are things we can't ignore? We talked about things we have to let go of. There's a lot of unlearning that needs to continue to happen in the women's health space. That's just the truth. And so I want you to continue to challenge yourself. What are you telling yourself? What have you adopted? What have you been conditioned into? And what do you maybe need to let go of? What no longer serves you? And how do you make sure you're moving as often and as quickly as possible towards this idea of proactive health, proactive decision-making, not reactive, not when you're injured, not when there's pain, not when you have massive symptoms that are so uncontrollable you can't even make sense of them, not when there's a diagnosis, but now. How can you start to be proactive now? By paying attention to your symptoms, letting go of the narratives, and figuring out what you need. Some of the things I work through with my clients when it comes to starting to take action are all focused mostly on the lifestyle side. We use data to figure out your unique imbalances and deficiencies, but then we're working lifestyle. How are you moving? How are you fueling with food for energy? How are you stress managing? How are you sleeping and resting with intention? What does your day-to-day look like? How do we set up better boundaries? How do we take more off your plate? How do we advocate for what you need? How do we make sure we have different support in place? We work lifestyle. Community and coaching is everything. And so when you're talking through symptoms and you're talking through narratives and you're trying to figure out how do I take a step forward towards my next stage of my health plan, it's going to be through having community support. It's going to be through having accountability and having a coach to guide you. That's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about the work I do, because I want women to feel supported and heard and loved and not gaslit like so many have felt. Your experience, your symptoms, what you have gone through is valid. And you need someone not only who has been there, like me, because I've been there. I've gone through the fire of this entire transition in my life. But you also need someone who's going to listen and who's going to help guide you towards what's truly going to serve your longevity health best. So when you're thinking about symptoms, you're thinking about old narratives, and you're thinking about the best next steps forward, take pause for a second and think about maybe the things that you've somehow normalized, and instead take a minute to challenge them. Think about maybe how you want to change something. Think about how you want to figure out how to move into a place of being heard and seen and validated in your experience, so you can actually get to a place of forward, proactive movement in your health journey. As always, I am an open book. Please feel free to reach out anytime with questions or information about how we can work together. In the show notes, you can click on free coaching session anytime to set up your coaching call with me. I would love to chat more with you about your health and wellness journey. But above all, I want you to think about this episode today. And if you're experiencing these symptoms, if you're dealing with these old school narratives, and if you're feeling really stuck, now is the time to figure out, how do I start to make proactive choices to improve and enhance my longevity health? Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. I know balancing time and energy can be a challenge, and I'm so proud of you for listening in and investing in your wellness journey. I feel incredibly grateful to connect with you and for the opportunity to share more knowledge, stories, and encouragement related to all things wellness. I would love to hear how this podcast has served you. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review on either iTunes or Spotify. Your support truly means the world to me and helps me reach more women just like you and me who are looking to transform their health from the inside out. Plus, when you share this episode with a friend, we invite more women in to learn alongside us. What a gift. Remember, knowledge is power, and the more we know, the better we can do. For ourselves, for our families, and our future. Well done on taking the step towards a healthier, happier you. Until next week, stay empowered and stay well.